Hello, everybody. Welcome to our lecture video. This is chapter 9. We're going to be discussing team dynamics and cohesion. This is a topic I'm sure a lot of us will find pretty interesting, especially those of us who have played on team sports. Others may be working on group projects and thinking about how those type of collaborations work or don't work well. We're going to be diving deep into those reasons as to why some teams are successful and others may not be so much. So first, why do we study groups? As you can see here on the right, we have our very famous championship teams over here. We can see that teamwork plays a big role, according to some of these famous players, on the success of their team. Michael Jordan says talent wins games, but teamwork wins championships. The Chicago Cubs, when they won the World Series, described a closeness of the players and the staff. So a lot of the success that we see in sport is due to the ability of the team working together. All right, so the first thing we need to do for this chapter is distinguish the difference between a group versus a team. So as you can see here, we have the two definitions. So a group is simply two or more people who interact with and exert mutual influence on each other. So if we think about examples of groups, most of the time people in a class are considered a group, right? You may interact with each other, you may have influence on each other, but you're all responsible for your own grades. How that may change is if we put you on a team. And so a team is any group of people who must interact with each other to accomplish shared objectives. So obviously this is illustrated on a sports team, right? You have an ultimate goal that you want to achieve together, you want to win. In the example that I mentioned before about putting classmates into a smaller group, a smaller team for a group project, then they would be more considered a team, right? Together, they're going to work together in order to achieve a certain class grade on this project. There's a difference between the two, and the biggest difference is that shared objective. So the difference between groups and teams, for both of them, members usually like each other, they may be attracted to each other, and they have some common goals, right? And so if we look at the exercise group here, we have a group of exercisers who look like they like each other and they all have a common goal. That is to get more fit, things like that. And then we have a sports team, which is a special type of group. Teams have 4 key characteristics that go beyond just an interaction with each other and a task interdependence, right? And we'll talk about what those 4 characteristics are. The first is this collective sense of identity. So there's a we-ness rather than an I-ness. There's that concept of there's no I in team, rather it's a we. And we see a lot of professional athletes sort of talk about this, right? If we see people getting those MVP awards, Defensive Player of the Year awards, things like that, and people ask, how does it feel? What is this like? What does this mean to you? And for a lot of those players, we hear them saying, oh, those things don't really matter as much to me. It's all about the team and helping the team get the win. And so again, it's rather than focusing on the I, it's more on the collective we. The second characteristic is that teams have distinctive roles on their team. All members know their job. We'll get a little bit into the roles on different teams, but that is another characteristic. Then we have structured modes of communication, lines of communication. This is usually established by the team itself. So how are we as a team communicating with each other? How are we disseminating information to each other? Does your team have a group text to send out announcements? Are team captains supposed to speak with the coaches if they want to express any needs or grievances representing the team? So those are all structured based on the team itself. So the team comes up with these lines of communication. And then 4, we have group norms, right? So these are rules that guide members on what to do and what not to do. Again, this is also established by the team as a whole. So what are the norms that are pretty much the rules that everyone has to abide by? Is it coming to practice on time, never being late? Do you have to take turns setting up the gym or the weight or the field? What are the different rules that everyone has to abide by? And so now we're going to get into theories of group development. How do the teams form? Becoming a team is really very much a process, and it's a process that is pretty, I would say, almost predictable in terms of teams are constantly changing and going through some growing pains, and then it takes a while for people or for teams to rebuild and get better, right? So teams are constantly going through these stages of development. And in this class, there are 3 theories of group development. So we have linear perspective, cyclical or life cycle perspective, and then pendular perspective. So these, all 3 are found in your book, and definitely read through those, but I'm going to be going over one specific one, which you will need to know for this class and for your test. So let's get started on that. That is the linear perspective of the stages of team development. And so there are 4 stages in this one. It's really easy to remember. There's only 4, and for the most part, no, actually they do rhyme. So it's easy to remember. And so the first of these stages is forming. And this is really when players and staff are introducing themselves to each other. Coaches usually introduce the group norms, the group goals, the rules of being on the team, and group members, so the athletes, are informally evaluating both the coach and each other. As you can imagine, when you first join a team, you're trying to figure out, who might be the best player, who might play what position, that social comparison, right? You're comparing your own strengths with others' strengths and weaknesses on the team. So that is what's happening when forming happens. As that process continues to happen, we might hit this storming stage. And when storming happens, the rules and the norms may be tested by various players. Maybe there's a player or 2 who isn't really bought into the team, to what the coach has envisioned for the team, things like that. Maybe they're not bought into how the coach coaches specifically. And so they are testing things out, right? Testing the waters a little bit. There's a lot of resistance that comes in this stage, and potentially some interpersonal conflict where some players may be bought in and others are not. And so there's a clash there. And so during this storming stage is when team building is probably the most effective. Getting your players to do more things together and working together, and pretty much just getting them used to being with each other is a good way to sort of get through this storming stage. Next, we have norming. So norming is when conflicts start to get resolved. Hopefully you've done enough team building exercises to get the players to really understand and know each other. And there's this new form of group commitment and cohesion that is developed. So this is where the sense of team unity is really formed. And once that team unity is formed, the team is able to get to this performing stage where team commitment, cohesion, the buy-in is at its highest, and everyone's roles are well defined, and everyone's relationships with each other are stable. So everyone knows what they have to do on the team. They know what other people's roles are on the team, and so they are able to count on each other to do their jobs and thus perform well. And while this stage is not in your book, it is part of this linear stage of team development, and I'm just going to put it out here. This last stage is adjourning. So essentially, when the season ends, when teammates graduate, you are adjourning. So players are reflecting on their experiences and making plans for their future, whether they're leaving or continuing on with the team. This fifth stage obviously always happens. There's always players leaving, players coming in, no matter what level of sport you're playing. So again, it's an important stage, but it's not part of the 4 that you will need to know for the test. But I definitely want you to know that it is there. So there are our 4, technically 5, but 4 main stages of team development that I want you to know: forming, storming, norming, and performing. So please know that, and in that order. And here I'm going to show just a video. It's a great video that exemplifies this linear perspective of group formation. It is taking scenes from Remember the Titans for you to see how their team is developing throughout the movie. Okay, so that last adjourning stage was probably not the best example, but in a sense, it is an ending of the team, right? When someone passes away. But anyways, overall, love that video, love that movie. This was really just a great example of the different stages, and hopefully you all were following along and are able to see the different stages of development in this movie. And in your lab assignment for this chapter, you are going to essentially be doing the same thing. You're going to be finding your own movie and finding examples of the different 4 stages in the movie. So hopefully you enjoyed that assignment, and it really gets you to just understand the group formation process in this linear perspective. Okay, so we're going to get into a little bit of group structure. There are a few things in group structure that you should know, and one of the most important things is this concept of group roles, right? So group roles involve behaviors that are required or expected of a specific person who occupies that position. There can be formal roles or informal roles within a group, right? So formal roles you can obviously think about, right? We have coaches, we have captains, we have position roles, right? So if you're playing volleyball, you're a setter, you're an outside hitter, you're a middle blocker, basketball, point guard, so on and so forth, right? Dictated by the sport itself and the structure of the organization. And then you also have these informal roles. These are ones that evolve just from being within a group and the group's dynamics and interactions among the group members, right? And your book lists quite a few of these informal roles. The examples here are enforcer, we have mediator. They also talk about like a star player or the comedian, or maybe you're the hype man, right? The spark plug is, I think, how they describe it in the book. But again, these are more informal, and so this sort of just develops the longer you are part of the team. And it's important for all persons within the group to both have role clarity and role acceptance in order for the team to be successful, right? So one, you have to be sure of what your role is on the team, and you have to have buy-in of being that person on the team. If you get voted team captain, but you don't see yourself as a team captain, it's likely you won't do well in that role, right? And it won't be beneficial for the team success. So role clarity and role acceptance is very critical. Role conflict exists when the person in that role doesn't have the ability, motivation, time, or understanding to achieve what they need to in that role. So if you are voted team captain, but you don't have maybe the discipline, or you're not comfortable telling people what to do and taking charge, then that is when role conflict happens. Then we have group norms. We talked about this briefly in the norming stage, where the coach or the team introduces this norm, this level of performance, pattern of behavior or belief. Usually it's the leaders who establish these group norms and these standards. In volleyball, there's this practice of team unity by huddling in the middle after every point, whether it's a point won or a point lost, coming together in the middle and basically resetting as a team. There's also group norms of players being able to express themselves, right? Whether that be being able to peacefully protest before a game, or coaches allowing their athletes to speak about issues beyond sport that are important to them. It's certainly, group norms definitely set up a certain culture within the team. So how to create an effective team climate? One is proximity, so keeping the members within your team together all the time. Distinctiveness, so the more distinctive the group feels, the better the climate. This is usually done via like team shirts, team sweatshirts, uniforms, things like that to make them feel like part of the group or part of one group. Fairness or lack of it can bring a group together or tear them apart. Feeling like each player is treated the same and is valued the same is very important. Greater similarity equals the closer the climate. So it's important when you have players from different backgrounds, playing experiences, to help them find some similarities, some common ground, usually by finding shared goals, shared attitudes and aspirations. Those are usually how you help people find some similarities. We also have task interdependence. Outcome interdependence refers to the fact that all group members benefit or suffer from the group's performance. Just creating that team environment, right? Like if one person is hurting, then we're all hurting. One person's success is everyone's success type attitudes. So that brings us to this next idea. The idea of individuals within a team performance in sport. While an individual's ability is important, individual abilities of team members alone is not good enough predictors of how a team will perform. In the NBA, we have the Brooklyn Nets getting all of these very, very talented players on their team. And time will tell if they will be successful in the NBA, but at the moment, they're probably in the very beginning stages of group development. And while all of those players on that team are very, very talented, just because they're talented doesn't mean it's going to predict that they will be successful. It's very, very important that they develop together as a team in order to be successful. And Steiner's model basically says that the actual productivity of this team is equal to all this potential, right? We have all these great players minus the losses that happen when their group processes aren't developed, right? So you have all this potential, but if the group as a whole does not develop well, then that lessens the actual productivity that they're going to have. Losses result from this motivation and this group coordination. All right, now we're going to talk about the Ringelmann effect and social loafing. This is something that you definitely need to know. It's a very interesting concept. Basically, it's this phenomenon where individual performance decreases as the number of people in the group increases. Okay, so a good example of the Ringelmann effect would be just, let's say you are pushing a car for some reason, right? So obviously, if you have 1, 2, 3 people, you're going to be pushing really, really hard, 100%, in order to get the car moving. But as you start to add more and more people, that effort that you need to put in, let's say now you have 20 people pushing, individual performances start to decrease, right? You don't need to push at 100% anymore, 110% anymore. You can now be pushing at 70% because there's so many people pushing that in order for you to complete the task, you don't need to put in that much effort. Social loafing. So social loafing is when individuals within a team or group put forth less 100% effort due to loss of motivation. So social loafing, give you sort of a different context, is due to loss of motivation, right? And so if you're on a rowing team and you have a bunch of people doing the same thing, and no one will really know if you are putting in 100% or if you're not putting 100% in. Then someone may put in less effort. If someone is, one, not going to get caught for not putting in 100% effort, or not being recognized for putting 100% effort, so different reasons for motivation. They don't care as much and they won't put in that effort, right? And it's usually easier to, social loafing usually occurs because it's easier to hide, right? No one will know that you're not putting in 100% effort. So how to eliminate social loafing? Emphasize the importance of individual pride and everyone's contributions. Increase identifiability of individual performances. So how are you going to know if one person's doing 100% and another person's doing 80%? Trying to find ways to distinguish those things. Determine specific situations in which social loafing occurs. Conduct individual meetings to discuss social loafing. So if you think someone's doing it, maybe call them out and talk to them individually. Appreciate each teammate's responsibilities by assigning players to other positions. Divide the team into smaller units, and attributing failure to internal factors. So rather than attributing failure to external factors, such as the other team being just better, you want to attribute failure to internal factors that can be changed, putting in more effort and making sure that they believe that they are in control of their success. So group cohesion is a dynamic process reflected in the tendency for a group to stick together and remain united in pursuit of its goals. This is a really important factor that influences participation, motivation, and performance, both in the sport and exercise setting. And there's two different types of group cohesion that you want to make sure your teams have. The first is task cohesion, and that is the degree to which group members work together to achieve common goals and objectives. And so task cohesion is very, very specific, right? This is teamwork and the ability for the team to do different tasks together. Pretty self-explanatory. The other type of cohesion is social cohesion, and that is the interpersonal attractions among group members. And so social cohesion is essentially getting the team to like each other, right? Outside of tasks, just to get to know each other on a very more personal level and get along both on and off the court. And so I'm going to play a couple videos and you're going to tell me which type of cohesion is being improved in each one, okay? Here's the first.
Each one of you will spend time every day with a teammate of a different race. You will learn about him and his family, his likes, his dislikes. You'll report back to me until you meet every one of your teammates. Until that time, we go to 3-a-day practices. You continue to ignore each other, we'll go to 4-a-day practices. Now, is there any part of this that you don't understand? Let's see.
All right, there's our good old Remember the Titans example. And so in this example, Coach Boone is encouraging social cohesion, right? There's no particular task that he's making them do together or accomplish. It's simply getting them to know each other as individuals. So that is social cohesion. Here is the next video.
I thought the whole day was terrific. John Herdman was outstanding. And then I think, we had a little bit of fun on the ice. And then I think, the things we did off the ice here, you could see that a lot of the stuff they really, really enjoyed. All right, that's it. Pie plates are landmines. So if you step on a mine, you're blowing up, but you're not blowing out of the game. You're blowing back to the start. Goggles on. There you go. The big thing there is communication, you know, how important communication is and how important a single voice is to follow. Right like this? We're going to the water bucket, and it'll mean a new coach for each team for the.
Okay, so that is one example. And yes, so this is task cohesion, right? So team building exercises are great task cohesion, essentially builders, getting, like as you heard coach say, getting the team to communicate better, learn how to work together in different contexts is very, very important in terms of cohesion. Okay, this lecture has gone pretty long. So I'm gonna whiz through these strategies for enhancing cohesion. We've talked about a lot of this already in terms of role clarity, leadership, pretty long. So I'm gonna whiz through these strategies for enhancing cohesion. We've talked about a lot of this already in terms of role clarity, leadership, and having athlete buy-in to team norms, enhancing the team environment, so putting together feelings of togetherness and distinctiveness, how you can improve or amplify those, and then enhancing team processes. So setting goals and enhancing cooperation, things like that. Here's some guidelines specifically for leaders for how to build team cohesion. So coaches, for all you coaches out there, these are some strategies for you. Again, not going to go over these. You can read these in your book. And then same for group members. Here's some strategies for all of you who are on a team for how you can build that team cohesion. And it's pretty easy, right? Getting to know each other better, helping each other, giving each other positive reinforcement, communicating honestly and openly, being very transparent, and just giving 100% effort at all times. So no social loafing around here. All right, so thanks everyone for staying with me. I know that was a long one, but hopefully you learned a little bit more about how to build effective teams. I will see you all next week.